If you have 3 million shillings and you fancy an executive, classy and good looking sedan, most probably you could be looking at the Audi A4 alongside cars like the Lexus IS200T, the Mercedes C-Class, though that one is a little bit expensive, and the BMW 3 Series. Welcome back to 026 Motoring once again. My name is Bill Sioture, and today I'm having a road trip to Embu, and I'm using this chance to tell you a couple of things about this 2017 Audi A4 B9. 026 Motoring makes your car ownership journey easy. Basically, you can check 026 Motoring social media platforms if you want to learn quite a number of things about cars, car reviews, car comparisons. All those are on 026motoring.com and our social media pages. If you want to purchase a car, you can always ring us on the number below. We are going to scout a clean car for you, run you through all the checks that are needed to ensure that you are going home with a clean car that does not get you into problems in the near future. Alright, here we go. 2017 Audi A4 B9 review. So I've played with this thing close to a month now, and I believe that I have every possible information that a prospective Audi A4 buyer will be interested in knowing or learning about this car before placing their money. When you're looking at this 2017 Audi A4, you can see that it is a complete makeover. It's quite different from what the previous generation 2016 and older how they used to look like, and that's why it's actually called the B9. The previous ones were called the B8. We also had the B8.5. Now, in terms of the face of this car, you can actually tell from the face that it's quite different. The headlamps have been redesigned. You can see that they are now slimmer, and the daytime running light is now like a complete line, which actually looks better than what the B8.5 used to have. When you're looking at the grille, it's also somewhat sharper than the previous one, and then the whole car generally looks like a makeover. And this car did not only receive changes in the body design, but also in the mechanical DNA, but I'll be coming into the mechanical component in a short while. The Audi A4 can be found with two body shapes. What I'm driving here today is obviously a sedan. You've already seen that, but it can also be found with another body that is called a Avant, which is a station wagon. If you've been following 026 for long, of course, you know a person like me, of course, will settle for that Avant or wagon shape, because I find it more practical and it gives me room to carry my bicycles. You can easily install a bike rack on the other side, but many people are going to settle for this as saloon because it's actually the most popular choice. If you'll be purchasing the 2017 Audi A4, it comes with quite a number of engines. There are diesels and there are petrols, but there are no hybrids. The most common engine choices are for our market in Kenya. Most probably you're going either to get into a 1.4 TFSI or a 2-liter TFSI, of which, if you're purchasing an Audi A4, I'll advise that make sure you are getting the 2000cc turbo petrol. That is actually the best engine, if you ask me. This 2.0 liter here in this car is slightly improved from the previous generation B8.5, because in this car the power is now shot up to around 250 brake horsepower and a healthy 370 Newton meters of torque. The previous one, that is the B8 and the B8.5, used to make to 20 HP and around 350 Newton meters of torque. And something you may also want to learn is that this car is now lighter than the previous generation by 120 kilograms. Now, when you're seeing that combination, it's a lighter car, and you are looking at improved power ratings from 220 to 250, 350 to 370 HP. Definitely, this car is going to be faster than the previous generation. Now, this 2.0 liter turbocharged petrol engine is paired to a 7-speed Stonic, or if you like, a dual clutch DCT gearbox, and then it channels power to all the four corners of this car in what Audi calls quattro, because in Audi the four-wheel drive system or all-wheel drive system is called quattro. In a BMW they will be using terms like X-drive, and in Mercedes for matic. But if you settle for a base model Audi A4, in most cases it can also be found with a front-wheel drive version only. But I'll prefer that if you're going for an Audi A4, make sure that you get the quattro. That is how you're going to actually get a bunch of there are advantages that this A4 Quattro has that the front wheel drive version will be lacking. Of course, I'll be coming into those details in a few moments. How does the 2017 Audi A4 B9 drive? When I'm looking at this car, let me say that it's quite an improvement from the previous generation, and it's one of the class leaders when it comes to driving dynamics. Now, this car has quite a number of driving modes. It has efficiency, comfort, auto, dynamic, and individual mode. Of course, when you want to drive the car sensibly, you are not speeding, it's good manners that you drive it in efficiency or comfort mode. But when you want a good performance and you want an aggressive car, you actually flip the car into dynamic mode, and that way it's actually going to hold to gears for longer. The suspension is going to become a little bit firmer, and the steering wheel is actually going to become a little bit heavy. So that is actually you are going to tune the car for performance. In terms of performance, this car does not struggle to make power. The 370 Newton meters of torque is available from low numbers, from around 1600 RPM. And actually you can see that it really doesn't struggle, because I'm now doing the speed limit, which is 110, and it actually doesn't look like it is a big problem. The revs are actually below 2000, and it's doing that job pretty easy. Another thing I like about this Audi A4 is its braking capability, because you can easily kill that momentum within a very short distance. In dynamic mode, this car tends somewhat to be a little bit aggressive and angrier. I rate the Audi A4, this B9 platform, I rate it higher than the Mercedes C200 and the BMW 3 Series. The reason is pretty simple. This car has the fastest acceleration from a standstill than a 320i and than a Mercedes C200. Basically because for 5.8 seconds to 100 kilometers per hour, it's actually quite punchy. And these 7-speed automatic gearbox, of course sometimes it can actually feel a little bit jumpy in traffic, but once you are on the highway and you are stretching the car, it actually feels smoother, and it's always at the right gear at the right time. Acceleration is so good. It's only that in dynamic mode, of course, you have to learn that the fuel consumption is going to shoot up because performance will always come at a cost. When I'm looking at the handling of this car around corners, let me say it doesn't feel like it will be struggling, because it feels settled, and because aerodynamically this is a low sitting car, and since the power is sent to all the four wheels, you have maximum traction at all times. So I don't feel like you're going to struggle whatsoever with the handling of this car. Actually, it's very nimble and agile around corners. Let me use those terms. The Audi A4 can also be found as a front wheel drive car. That's why when you're going into the market, you have to be sure that whatever you are getting, if you wanted all-wheel drive, ensure that it has those quattro badges, and you can always go an extra mile. You can always kneel down and actually check the drive shafts of the car. Now, the all-wheel drive system in this car does not mean that you should be taking this car off-road because it's a low-sitting sedan. Basically, the function of all-wheel drive in this car is actually to give you maximum traction for on-road driving. So basically, AWD in this car is for enhanced or good handling, not off-roading purposes. If you want to go a little bit of off-road, the Audi A4 can also be found with a station wagon that is a little bit jacked up. It's actually called the A4 All-Road or the A6 All-Road, and those are some of the cars I normally like from Audi. When I'm looking at this car, because it's lighter than the previous generation, of course I was expecting that the fuel figures will be somewhat higher, which of course is true, because when I'm looking at this car, the average fuel consumption on the highway, like this highway whereby there is no traffic, you can actually see the north of 11 kilometers per liter, which according to me, I deem it efficient for 2000cc driving all the four wheels. But in traffic, the fuel figures also can sometimes drop to 10 point something kilometers per liter. Now, there are not many cars which can actually smash 0 to 60 in less than 6 seconds, which have 250 HP, which drive all the four wheels, that can give you the north of 11.5 kilometers per liter. When I'm looking at this engine, It's a good performer because you are looking at 250 HP and 370 Newton meters of torque, which makes it have class leading power figures. There are components in this car that have a lifespan that is short, that are built with obsolescence in mind. Because when I'm looking at this engine, there are a couple of weaknesses. Number one, it's about the cooling system. There are a bunch of pipes here which actually are sometimes very weak, and you have to replace them sometimes. Even for this car, there is a pipe behind the engine which actually broke down, and we had to replace it because it was actually spilling the coolant. This is a 7-year-old car, of which there are parts that are built with obsolescence in mind. Basically, when I'm saying obsolescence in mind, it means that at some mileages, there are things you should do to this car which actually should make your ownership journey easy. I was chatting with my friend overseas who also owns an Audi B9 but the 5, and they told me cannot own an Audi outside warranty because there are things that normally break down. For example, the cooling system, the pipes normally give up, and then there is this thing here. It's actually called the water pump. It actually has a high failure rate. If you are running this Audi A4 B9, an Audi Q5, the Audi A5, this thing at some point will need to be replaced. It's not a user failure, it's actually a manufacturer's fault. The function of the water pump, it balances the flow of the coolant from the radiator and to the engine. So when this thing actually fails, it means that your engine is going to overheat. And now this thing is not actually cheap, because for this car we replaced the water pump here at a cost of 48,000 shillings. Now you can actually tell that if you own this car and you don't have some money on the side, it's actually a car that is going to surprise you. Now, away from this water pump failing, this engine also at high mileages, it's actually, I've seen reports of oil consumption, but that is common even from the previous generation, the Audi B8 and the 8.5. So I'll say that it's good manners that you always check your oil levels in this car so that you avoid problems of the engine knocking. Another thing is that always ensure that you are checking your coolant levels, because these weak plastic pipes at some point they can actually give up and your car is going to overheat. But at least for this car, you can actually monitor that temperature cluster reading. When you see it going up, of course you have to check your cooling system. In terms of the gearbox, always when you are purchasing this car, for example, this car has a mileage of 99,000 kilometers. It's approaching 100,000 kilometers. At those high mileages, I normally advise that when you are purchasing this car, always do service the gearbox. Servicing the gearbox in this car is actually pretty cheap, because you are looking at 14,000 shillings. Now, when I'm looking at 14,000 shillings versus a 3 million car, I don't think that is hefty. So make sure that you also service your gearbox. Servicing an Audi A4 is actually very cheap. By servicing, I mean changing the oils. But when I'm looking at the spare parts cost and availability, the B9 is actually a pretty new car around. That means you may also have problem with spare parts, because even for this car's cooling system, we have had to import some parts because they are not compatible with the old B8 or the B8.5 platform. Another thing I've really learned with this car is that when you are running this car, you should be ready to spend. If you are not ready to spend on this car, I'll advise that you consider the cheaper alternatives. Something like a Toyota Royal Saloon is actually cheaper to run than this car, but it's not a good performer like this A5. You may also want to look at something like the Lexus IS200T. It's actually also a very reliable car, and it's also within the price range of this car. So this car needs someone with a good or a serious cash flow. Otherwise, it can also make you bankrupt. Let me put it that way. So it's a very good car in terms of performance, but I'll say that you should always have some coins on the side so that you can fix problems when they come in. If you give this car the right treatment, I'm pretty sure it's going to serve you for long, because I've seen people with the Audis and they have actually gone to very high mileages. So you should not be scared by those water pump failure and the cooling system. This is how the cabin of this 2017 Audi A4 B9 looks like, and it's actually a pretty good place to spend time. When I'm looking at this steering wheel, it actually has some good finishes. You have a volume control buttons on the left side. You have paddle shifters below the steering wheel, but from my experience, you don't need to use these paddle shifters because the 7-speed automatic gearbox is always at the right gear at the right time. This is where you are going to control your lights, of course. And the cluster reading here, you can actually see from 0 to 300 kilometers per hour. Of course, if you want to continue watching 0 to 60 motoring videos, don't try attaining that 300 kilometers per hour. On this center console here, you actually have how you're going to control your media controls. Of course, there is this Audi MMI infotainment screen here, which is actually controlled from this rotary knob down here. You have a fancy gear knob here, an electronic parking brake, and a knob here to, of course, adjust your volume. And you can always adjust your driving mode here. From efficiency, you move to comfort, automatic, dynamic for those who are into performance, and individual. Here, these are the climate control buttons. I like these buttons because they are actually very easy to utilize, especially when you are driving the car. Now, when I'm looking at the interior design of this car, the fit and finish in this car is actually pretty good. I feel like because this is a 7-year-old car, Audi actually did a very good job here. Is this Audi A4 B9 value for money? If you ask me, it's a very good car because it has class leading performance. The fuel efficiency is also good. It's a stylish car when you're looking at this car because it will easily stand out wherever you are going, and it's a much improved car from the previous generation. And in terms of performance, it has very good class leading performance on the highway. The braking is okay. So there is no reason whatsoever why you should not purchase an Audi A4 B9 if you can afford it, because they are actually, because when you're looking at the competition, the BMW 320i is less powerful than this car, and most of them will be coming as a rear wheel drive car. The Mercedes-Benz C200 is actually very expensive, because if you want a Mercedes-Benz with a 4MATIC all-wheel drive system, is also going to be very expensive. So when I'm looking at the 320i, the Audi A4, something like the Mercedes C-Class, I find that this one has the best balance of features, performance, safety, and driving dynamics. So if you found this content helpful, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check our social media pages, that is 0 to 6 motoring on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And you can always follow me at a personal level, Bill CO2 on Instagram and Facebook. And should you have a question about this 2017 Audi A4 B9, because I'm pretty sure this review has not covered everything, you can always shoot us a message and we are going to answer your questions.